Dutch design. I guess I should start by giving you a very brief synopsis of Joep Van Lieshout's track record. AVL being a recent organisation, I think the last 5 years or so, something like that. Joep is from a fine art background, sculpture trained, Academy of Modern Art in Rotterdam, and then after various solo and joint exhibitions started to get noticed by various architects, and you may already be familiar with his work through having seen things like the Grand Palais of Almere, where noticeably present were these very consistent, brightly coloured, independent objects that were commissioned by Almere as, if you like, carry-out jobs, you know, the takeaway part of the scheme. I wanted to read you a brief extract from the Super Dutch book, recently published, and this is Bart Loodsma's comment about AVL. Much of what artist Joep Van Lieshout has produced in a relatively short time does not consist of art in the strictest sense, but of utensils, items of furniture, architecture, and articles of food and drink, practical solutions for everyday problems. As he puts it, with a heavy dose of irony, the irony is appropriate because Atelier van Lieshout has a sharp eye for the underside of modernity. For a long time, the project of modernity was viewed as a civilizing process, but increasingly this has proved an illusion. In his view, the violence that was once an everyday part of human existence is concealed in modern society. Atelier van Lieshout's activities aim to cast doubts on a number of conventions in the arts. They are also a challenge to architects and designers. Van Lieshout's furniture, I hope that's not mine. No. It's turn them off time. Atelier van Lieshout's activities aim to cast doubt on a number of conventions in the arts, but they're also a challenge to architects and designers. Van Lieshout's furniture looks distinctly like the cheap modern items one can buy in large furniture outlets, yet there is a significant difference. While mass-market items of furniture are made of plasticized chipboard that is often disguised to resemble another material, an inexpensive wood, for instance, the crude fiberglass texture of Van Lieshout's furniture does not pretend to be anything other than plastic. This honesty, this lack of shame, is the aesthetic statement that Atelier van Lieshout makes, and a number of provocative questions are raised. What, after all, could be better than cheap furniture that is even washable? What are we supposed to do with all those meaningless objects that are ornamental rather than functional? What's wrong with producing designs in an unlimited series? In a society dominated by mass production, can the value of an artwork still be defined by its uniqueness? And does that artwork have to be made by the artist alone? Could it not also be produced by a company such as Atelier van Lieshout? Is it not all to the common good if clever do-it-yourself enthusiasts can copy the work at home with the aid of manuals provided? Paradoxically, it is questions like these, in the context of cultural discourse, that elevate Van Lieshout's work to the status of art. Now, I'm wondering about the Dutch context in that respect, because it seems to me that Holland is a place of paradox in any case, because it is both radical and reactionary. It's simultaneously the land of tolerance and arrogance. And you look at some of the examples of Atelier van Lieshout's work, and it quite clearly fits within that discipline, it seems to me. So, for example, the uncompromising interior is always complemented with the Spartan interior, neat and tidy wood-panelled Dutch house, not so far away. Or perhaps the pure, crisp Calvinist linen on the multi-woman beds. Is this for organised orgies? or the rusty exterior of the operating theatre contrasts with the seamless clinical interior, the working interior, or perhaps the cannon mounted on the Mercedes, the choice of car for dictators and bourgeoisie alike. It can be called useful art, from the toilet to the operating table. They can be called things you've just got to have, to use Joep's own words, practical solutions for everyday problems. But the work is hard to categorize, and it's one of the reasons why I think people have very different reactions to it. It's not art, it's not furniture, or it is art, it is furniture. It's useful art, it's anti-design, it's DIY. It's minimal with gold caps on. It's also, for me, interesting because it's a very direct and short line between not just content and form, but the concept and the form. There's an emphasis on construction control. There's a rejection of anything superfluous. There's the idea that economy is somehow desirable. There's also mobility. Mobility as a way of life, as a way of sidestepping authority, a way of sidestepping dependency. And I'd like to introduce you by asking the question, if there is no ideology, then what is AVL-Ville all about? Joep Van Lieshout, please welcome him.
Thanks, Alex. I took a lot of slides with me, and because, well, I was trained as a sculptor, and I think that a sculptor or an artist does visual communication, and I think actually very often designers and architects as well. So for me, I try to accumulate as much as possible influences from the surrounding world that I would work in, and then later on I make a sculpture, because I think it's very necessary to make the sculpture on object. So many slides. Well, first I tell you something about Atelier van Lieshout. I started, I don't know, 15 years ago by myself, and I gradually grew. First I had an intern, and 2 interns, an assistant and an intern, and nowadays it's a real company, and there are like 30 people working in the studio. And it's not a collective in such a sense, it's more organized as a company. In a way you could say it's organized as an architect's firm. The only difference is that the people who work there are not architects. Some of them are architects, some of them are industrial designers, some of them are artists, and other people are just people that walked in and said, well, I can work with woods, and do you have a job? So it's a very mixed group of people. Sorry. It's a very mixed group of people, and that makes it very special. So I just took some slides that have to do with the architecture. Before this, there was a whole other universe of objects, which are very interesting, but I don't show it today. I start with this very simple conceptual furniture from the end of the 80s. When I was an artist, a sculptor, I thought by myself, maybe it's a little bit too easy just to concentrate on the design of things, to make a nice shape or a nice composition. I want to make something more tough, more hard, more conceptual, more rude. So I said, okay, I'm going to make furniture, and this furniture has very specific, is made according to a recipe, a specific size system, which defines the size of the table itself and all the elements of the tables and shelving units, like the thickness of the blades and the thickness of the legs, as well as the colors. So in a way, was one half-page A4 that described all the possibilities that you could make according to the system. And in art world, where I was operating at that time, this was very extreme decision to say, to take away all those sacred things of art, like unicity, originality, and non-functionality. And because all the works were functional and were made in large editions. Later on, I started to make custom-made works. So after I made all those conceptual works, I said, okay, now I'm going to make objects that are made for a certain location and for a certain client. In a way, I was completely serving the client. And of course, the work grows and grows and grows. So first you make a table, then you make a bathtub, and then you start to make a complete sanitary unit, like these are. This is also the end of the 80s or maybe 1990. Some other toilets, bathrooms, and renovations and refurbishments of buildings. So in a way, since I have always been very interested in designing small spaces. And like for example, the bathroom on the left-hand side is really very small. And for me, it was a challenge to take as much advantage of the possibilities to make something happen. This is a freestanding bathroom, which is just hooked to an existing building, a castle in this case. And it has all the elements for service inside, like hot water supply, pumps to get rid of the dirty water, and so on. And some more elements that were designed. And as you can see here, I started to become more interested in the shape or the design of the objects again, in contradiction to the very simple and plain furniture. And for us, designing is not only making a nice shape. Design is something I think is very important, for something that you're very proud of, and you think you have to do it. And on the other hand, also it's very important how it's produced. In Atelier van Lieshout, we produce every single object that we design. So we never design something and then bring it to some factory or contractor to execute it. So there is a lot of influence between the material, the technique, and the design. And in this case, for example, we used the material that we, well, in a way discovered ourselves. It's a kind of an insulation material that is used for chemical industry or to insulate pipes and tanks. And then when you so in this material, it's very light and very soft and not very strong. So if you want to build something out of it, you have to make a temporary structure inside this object, and then with wooden sticks and nails and glue you build the whole thing, and it's very weak. Then you apply one layer of fiberglass on the outside, then the object becomes a little bit stronger, at least strong enough to take away the skeleton and the interior. And then you do the interior, and then you get some kind of a sandwich construction. So this technique makes it possible to make very lightweight, but also very strong, insulated structures with, well, normally difficult to make shapes. So I mean, normally if you want to make something round, it's really a hassle. But with this fancy material, it's not difficult at all. So that's what I want to say. Like very often, you have to look into the production or the technique and the material to find something special and to make something nice about it. Then I got really interested in what we call slave units. And a slave unit is a little architectural unit with a specific function. In this case, it's a bedroom. And to me, a building or a space or a room should never be more than strictly necessary, unless it serves a specific function. So it means the bedroom should be big enough to put a mattress inside and to perform all the things you usually perform in a bedroom. And the idea was that you make an extension to an existing building. Like, for example, on the left-hand side, you see the architectural unit, which is called, I don't know, the bedroom unit, I think. And on the right-hand side, you see it installed. So we cut a hole in an existing building's wall, and then we bolted the unit on the exterior. And in that sense, you have an extension to the space with a minimum of volume, with a maximum of effect. Here's another one. This is in a museum in Utrecht, where we made an extension to one of the offices. And also it's the same material that we used. It's a polyurethane foam. And then the black stripe that runs along it, it's carbon fiber. It's also like a composite material that is 20 times stronger than steel, but it's very light. So it's a very simple construction that still hangs. And inside there is a little office meeting room, and of course a bed. Because I think 90% of the objects we make have a bed inside. And this is a more recent example of a clip-on or like a slave unit. It's the toilets of the Museum Boijmans in Rotterdam. And so they wanted to give their existing wing, they wanted to give it a restaurant function. They didn't have restrooms, so they asked me to make restrooms that would fit well with the building. So first of all, I made it out of camouflage colors, which are the same kind of colors that are in the building, because actually I don't agree with all those museums. Well, at least in Holland, all the museums, they start extending their building or build new museums, and I think museums should concentrate not on their building but on the exhibitions. So, and actually, I was absolutely against making museums more bigger or beautiful than they are. To me, they should be very simple. They should be more like a farmer's shed with white walls. But anyway, they asked the commission, so I said, well, maybe we have to do it. So I'm very pragmatic as well. And then, of course, when you work in a public building, you get a lot of hassle with building commission, building permits, sanitation, fire people. Like you get like a whole lot of administration over you. And one of the rules they say, since it's like a restaurant, you need to have separate men's room and separate women's room. Then they should have a separate washroom, which can be locked with a door. And then there should be a door between the space to wash your hands and the museum. So this meant, in this case, in this very small unit, they obliged us to put 5 doors. And when you put 5 doors in such a small unit, it's nothing. There's nothing left over. You just have like very scary, tiny spaces where you have to go in and stink. So, I said, okay, we make the doors, but we made a very clever solution. So we invented very special hinges that didn't exist. And the doors were a little bit, I call it, not straight, but a little bit beveled. So the doors would open by themselves. So if you close the door and you lock it, it's locked. But when you open it, the door opens by itself and then disappear in the wall. So then you get this view. So when the people came from the building permit and they said, where are the 5 doors? I said, they're here, but they're always open. And they said, okay, there are 5 doors. So They went away. So now I think a very important task for an architect in this time is to be very creative, not only with designing, but also very creative with rules. Because nowadays there are so many rules about sizes, zoning, insulation, fire. Almost everything is regulated. And it means that you have just a little bit of freedom. And then of course you have a lot of limitations because of the money and a lot of limitations because of the client. So actually the most difficult part of being an architect is try to build your own things. So you always, what I want to say, you always have to influence your client, you have to influence the contractors that are not very able to give, well, very, how you call it, big craftsmanship nowadays. And you have to influence, how you call it, government employees that are about the rules. And if you do that, that's even more important than make a design. So be clever and, how you call that word, mean. So this is one of the combinations of the master and slave unit. So all the colorful things on the side, they are slave units. The yellow one is the bedroom, orange is kitchen or kitchenette, and the other one is the bathroom. And the cubicle in the middle is the master unit. And actually that's just a box with modular holes in it with a modular size. So it means you can, well, click in all those slave units. So this is like very much like an architecture that almost doesn't exist, since nothing is steady. So you can always change the position of the units, or you can build another unit to it, or you can extend it, or you can even move away the whole mobile home. And of course those slave units are also very built around its function. This is the interior. Is that in focus? This is the interior. Although the space is very small, it's about the master unit is about 7 by 3 meters. But since there is a lot of well, I made clever use of the space and the difference of heights of the slave units and volumes. It looks very spacious. And of course you can also look outside. So what I want to say is that to have a nice experience or a spacious experience of a space is not only decided by the actual size, much more how you manipulate the space. For example, this space is very low, it's 2 meters 10, which officially is too low for a building because the minimum size is, at least in Holland, is 2 meters 40. So according to the building permits, it would be too small. But if you would make it 240 high, the space would look much smaller, actually. Here's another piece. This is a caravan, which is called La Drone, which actually is like a caravan with a slide-out part, and it's conceived as a loft caravan. So inside is like a seating area. There are some mini bars. There's a little that little hatch there is the toilet. This gives it's a very simple sewer solution, and that's a upholstered table. And in the back, in the slide-out part, there's a little bedroom to rest. And this is another piece, a mobile home that we made. It's called a modular house mobile, and it's a flatbed truck, and it has 3 units on it. This one has all the utilities inside, like heating, water, kitchen, and so on. This part is completely empty. It's just like a part to enjoy space, and you could put a table there or some chairs. And then the back part here, and here as well, is the is a toilet. So actually it's a big door that hinges open, but in the double door there is the toilet and sink. This is a mobile exhibition space. Again, here you see the polyurethane foam. This is this material that they use. This is the material that they use for insulating tanks. And so it's in a way it's a very, in comparison, a very cheap material, and you can make very special shapes with it. And this is a big project, a large project that we did in America, in the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis. And the commission of the museum was to design an art lab, a mobile art lab as they call it. And what they want to do is to make an educational program inside this trailer and then drive it to schools or to neighborhoods with, I call it poor neighborhoods, to bring the good word of the art to the people. And they asked me to design something for it, which I of course liked. But on the same hand, I didn't feel too happy about it, because to me it was a little bit too much design. So they want something and I designed something, and I had the idea I have to give a message, especially in America. And so in a way you could say it was too political correct to me. It was too nice and too beautiful and too serving to those people, which were very friendly. But anyway, I said, okay, that's fine, but then I want to build something else. I said, okay, that's no problem. So I decided to build this house, this black house, which is in contrast with the trailer, because the trailer is beautiful and rounded and the interior is very nice. And the wooden house is like an archetypical house. It's just like a wooden house, like you see everywhere, with tar on the outside and very cheap plywood on the inside. This is the trailer. So this place here is the kitchen, office, and they can open up the hatch on the side if they want to do like a performance or something like that. And then this space here, it can be used, they can put tables there or they can make exhibitions there, so it's a very flexible space. This is the interior, which looks, of the wooden house. It looks very romantic, but on the same hand is a little bit creepy. So in a way it was also like a house built for extremists, you could say, or terrorists. And actually the role model, like the example that I wanted to use for this house, was the house that the Unabomber built for himself, which I didn't see at that moment that I designed this thing, and I just finished it. I saw a picture of his house, which was actually much more beautiful and far much more simple than mine. Anyway, on one of the add-ons, like a little bit hidden room, there was we devised a machine to make environmental unfriendly paint, like really like a tar-based paint. That's really good to preserve wood, but it's not allowed anymore. And up in the attic there was like you could say a bad person house with a cage for children. And I don't know why this slide is here, but I think it's a nice work. We just finished it a couple of months ago, and it's a prison. And so in Holland you have the 1% for art rule. It means that 1% of the building budget will be spent on art, and they asked us to make something, an artwork for the, I call that like the room where the inmates meet their family and friends. So every couple days, or every couple of months they are allowed to meet their friends, and they come in this space. Now I've been visiting many prisons for this course, and the most appalling thing you see there is this. I mean, all those prisons are very new, very clean, built with good materials, like very expensive buildings. And but they don't have character. That's like really, that's the most awful thing of the prisons. It looks like a hospital or a school, and anyway, there's no atmosphere. And for example, I was here in Brixton prison to do also a little lecture, and that's a very old prison and has many disadvantages, but still, we really have the feeling it's a special place. In contradiction to all this like awful place with no character. So anyway, I decided to make a very dramatic space there. And we devised a very big window, which is built out of steel bars and fiberglass, because it had to have a function as well to keep the prisoners inside. And of course there are many rules about the size of the bars and the distance of the bars and like all this kind of calculations. Anyway, so we engineered this system, which is very decorative, but still has the same properties as a normal jailhouse bar would have. And we make the furniture, and we put like a very expensive wooden flooring, etc. So I put this slide probably because I think it's important to give atmosphere or to give feeling to a space. And this is a series of sensory deprivation chambers. And actually, they are built as very small chambers, very small rooms. And the rooms are just big enough to go inside and to sit, to close the door, and then you're deprived of your senses. It means no light, no smell, and no sound, and maybe some other things. Anyway, you can, like for example here, you can see this is the door. You go in, and then this is your head. And the space is just big enough to stand up, open the door, and go out. Same thing for this. So in a way, I design or I shape the space around the body or its movements. There's some other examples. And so in here it has a function like there's a library or like a workspace. And this one is also a little design studio with a bed. So you could design and sleep or work and sleep, work and sleep. It's like a complete claustrophobic experience. And this one is actually exactly the same as this one. But this one is covered with a special material, and this material is called orgone material. And that's invented by a kind of ambiguous Austrian psychoanalyst, which was a student of Freud. And he was very famous, and after or just before the Second World War, he fled to the United States, and there he discovered his orgone theory, which means all the orgone waves from the universe you can concentrate in a small cubicle, and if you're inside this cubicle, it will cure you from all kinds of diseases. Could be headaches, could be cancer, could be frustration, could be impotency. That's why it's called orgone accumulator. And this material is a very simple material, so it's alternating layers of steel wool and rock wool. Well, anyway, this guy had a lot of followers in America. There were a lot of celebrities that bought this orgone chambers of Reich. And then in the 50s, he was caught by the American Food and Drug Administration because they thought he was a quack. So he was like not a real doctor, but he was just faking a cure. And he was put in prison, and actually all the organ accumulators and all the books about the subjects were burned. The reason why I use this orgone material is that I want to show appreciation for crazy or not accepted people, because I think it's very important that things like this happen. This is this is actually the largest sensory deprivation chamber that we make. And it has all the functions that normally they're normally attached to a house. So this is the toilet and the bathroom. This is the kitchen, very simple, but just with a deep frying pan. This is the office and the living room. And this is the bedroom. So in all those shapes, I mean, actually it looks like it's designed. Of course it's designed, but on the other hand, it's just like a calculation of the least necessary space. This is the interior. It's very small in fact. And this is the smallest sensory deprivation chamber, and you could say it's the smallest piece of architecture since it's just a helmet that you put over your head. Then this is a piece that's called the Autocrat, and it's a kind of a survival wagon, you could say. And so it's built and conceived and designed as a unit that makes you able to survive in uncivilized areas. So everything functions with wood and collected water, and what is very important, of course, is food, because if you want to survive, you need to eat. So and how you get food? Well, you hunt, or you have you farm, or you collect. And well, at that time I was more fond of hunting. So except that I made this piece, I also did research on food, on meat, on butchering and preserving of meat. Well, this is one of the equipment that we made: a butcher block, a pig pan, a ladder, and some of the ovens, and one of the, well, a rack with all the products that we did. Because for me, it's not only making an object, but it's also go all the way. So we actually wrote a book about it. We wrote a book about butchering. So how to butcher the old-fashioned way, how to butcher a pig in the backyard, and how to preserve and cure all the meat so you can keep it for a longer time. And that's something, again, which is not allowed anymore. So the only way you can butcher a pig is to bring it to one of those giant butcher houses, and then it goes, it's an industrial process, which I think is not very nice for the animals, and it's not very nice, I think, for the taste of the meat. And so there were just a few people in Holland that still had the skill to butcher the old-fashioned way. And so we learned the skills of them, and we interviewed them, and we wrote it down. So in a way, it's, I mean, if those people die, probably there are just a very, very few people, or maybe the whole skill gets lost. And in such a way, you get very remote of the things you're eating. Then the city of Almere, which is a pretty large town in the Netherlands, which is built on reclaimed land. So it's 50 years ago, it was a big lake in the Netherlands, which was about, well, a very big lake. And they start pumping out the water, and then the land that disappeared, they called Flevoland. And in a way, it's an island. It's about 60 kilometers by 20 kilometers wide. And Almere, it's the biggest city on the island, which has about 300,000, I think, 200,000 inhabitants. But the city is only 30 years old. So 30 years ago, there was not a single road, not a single house, nothing at all. So everything is completely new. And this town, which is actually very bourgeois, unfortunately, because I would expect when you build a new city, you have a pioneer mind, you want to do new things. But in fact, they are like very, well, in a way, normal. Anyway, they asked us to make a plan, like a city planning for the city. and to give, in a way, also a reaction of to the master plan of OMA, Koolhaas, proposal for the city center of Almere. And so our plan, I will show you now with these drawings. So they needed, the thing was they needed 30,000 new houses. And they asked to a group of, well, people, architects, artists, to give ideas how to solve this problem, to build 30,000 new houses in this area, which is a lot. So I said, well, don't build new houses, but buy or fabricate mobile homes. And those mobile homes can be sold or can be given to new people or to people from Almere, and they can put their mobile homes wherever they want. So there is no city planning. So they could put it in the forest, along the sea, in the city square, in front of someone's other's house, in the garden of someone else. So there was no single rule. Everything was possible. And then the people who live there could do whatever they want. So here, in this case, there's a guy hunting and some women working the land and some animals. And of course, the next step in a process like this is that people start to improve their situation. So on the left-hand side, you see the same autocrat, but then there is also a farmhouse and stables and community space. There's a little factory here, and there is another hut, and here is a place to put the agricultural machines and weaponry. So this is then one of this, the farmhouse is exploded view here. So you see like, in a way you see like cubicles, like identical houses for people from the community. Twin toilet bathrooms, large communal space, a kitchen. And inside the kitchen, it's also a very, in a way you could say, a very traditional kitchen. And very important in this kitchen is the amount of food is there, and the quality of the food. So I think this food is meant to be economically, no, not economically, I call it ecologically grown. I call it biological food, organic food. And people are preparing some really nutritious meals. But on the same hand, they have all the weapons ready to defend themselves. And the idea was actually for this, to introduce anarchy and self-sufficiency to the island of Almere, Flevoland. Because they're only connected with 3 bridges to the mainland, and so it's very easy to cut those bridges and start a new economy. So since the whole of Europe is reuniting, I thought it was a good idea to make an independent state of Almere. And of course this economy, now it's like a sleeping town. So all the people who live in Almere, they go to work in Utrecht or in Amsterdam or in Hilversum or whatever places. So there's a big traffic jam in the morning and a big traffic jam in the night. And the island itself is pretty dead. So I said, okay, we have to have an economy. So the economy was based on illegal activities. So it means like weapon manufacturing, alcohol and drug manufacturing. And another good source of income was prisoners. Because prisoners, and probably here as well, they need a lot of attention and they need a lot of money as well. I mean, it's very expensive to feed them, to guard them, to, well, whatever, to reintegrate them in society. And it was about, I don't know, in Holland it was something like £20,000 a year for each prisoner. And I think we can do that much cheaper. So we put big barracks, so they have all the prisoners, they sleep in the barracks. At daytime they work in the drug or alcohol factory. And at nighttime they enjoy themselves with their products, with whatever they want to do. And for us it's good because we do it for half price, so we get like £10,000 a year for each prisoner. We have free labor, and the prisoners are happy as well. This is like, this is jailhouse scene. This is the alcohol plant, so it devised very small units built into a shipping container in which you can make alcohol. So this is like the layout of a still, and here is the layout of a small alcohol and medicine factory. So here the wine or the beer is made, then this is the still, and that produces alcohol, about 60 liters a day. And then here there's a little laboratory where you can mix the alcohol with herbs and spices to make very healthy and effective medicine and drugs. This is one of the weapons. This is the AVL submachine gun, and it's actually it's like well, we did a lot of research in weapons, which is pretty difficult because normally all this information is secret, so you cannot find building plans of weapons. You don't find specifications. It's like, yeah, I think it's even illegal to publish drawings and plans of weapons. But we found some of them via very dubious sources. And then we add everything together, we improve them, and we we detail them so they will become, well, how to say, producible. This is an energy system, which is also based on alcohol. So you can make alcohol for consumption, but you can also make alcohol for fuel. And you can make alcohol for fuel of, well, waste or of other organic material. This alcohol can be used to power generators to produce electricity, and all the spare heat is stored in large buffer tanks. And then there's also solar energy and another place to burn waste. Anyway, all those things that produce heat is buffered in these large storage tanks. And when those storage tanks are insulated, the heat remains there for years even. And whenever you need heat, for example for heating hot water or greenhouses, you just can attract heat from the buffer tanks. Then this is the electricity that comes from the generator, and then we have some other renewable energy. Then the alcohol that is made out of pig food or waste goes back to the pigs, and they get some nice fresh vegetables, and they produce I call that shit, that will be recycled and turned into biogas. I call it biogas, which can be used for cooking or can be used to burn in the incinerator. And this is a blast furnace. So we make a presentation, well, something like this to the city of Almere, and they said, well, thank you, Mr. Van Lieshout, but maybe you try Zeewolde, which is another town in this area. And, well, they paid the bill, but so that was fine. So anyway, actually I was very charmed about the idea. I said, well, actually it's very nice to have a place like that. I think it's so stupid that they don't do it. So I thought, well, if they don't want it, I will do it myself. So we started making the weapons. So this is also like a small weapon manufacturing plant. Inside there is well, some metalworking tools. And in the back there is a laboratory, so where you have, like, you can mix the chemicals to make the explosives. And this unit here is the house of the weaponsmith. So this is the bedroom and this is his office. And this is another piece we made. This is a Mercedes that we cut off the back half and installed a homemade 57mm cannon. Some other weapons, AVL submachine gun, and a little handgun and brass knuckles combined. It's very handy when you go out. And these are the AVL M80 mortars. So this is also like a weapon. And that's the 57mm cannon. Well, we also like to please people, and people don't like weapons, so we have to make it a little bit light. And well, the good thing about this, what we do, is that they can't really pinpoint us to a certain activity. So they don't say, Van Lieshout, he's an artist, or Van Lieshout, he's a designer, or he's an architect, or he's whatever. Which makes it very interesting, so you can create a lot of possibilities. And very often you find museums and art institutions willing to pay for production costs. So. And it gave us a lot of publicity, the weapons. So it was a very clever investment. This is the alcohol factory in function. That's Yolanda, our chief moonshiner. And this is the AVL Field Hospital. And it's a little hospital that is built in a 40-foot shipping container and could be really functioning. Could be function as like a health center or information center or operation room, or could be used in war situations, since it's a very compact unit. And inside there's a waiting room, a doctor's office, sanitary spaces, and a recovery room. This is the operation table and some operations. This is the AVL canteen. And AVL, for the people who don't know yet, AVL means Atelier van Lieshout, which is the official name of our company. And this piece we actually made for an exhibition in Birmingham, or near Birmingham, in the city of Bourneville, which is the city where they make the Cadbury chocolate. And the whole Bourneville actually is a little city built around the factory in the end of the 19th century about. So they try to create an ideal town for the people who worked in the factory. So they have a kind of cottage, very romantic, with reed roofs, and they have large gardens, and it's like very idyllic. And so the owners of the factory, they felt very responsible for the well-being of people. Although it was very, how you call that, they were Quakers, so there was like an alcohol ban, and there was a strict separation between men and women. But still, I think it was a very interesting concept. And for this exhibition, we made this canteen. So in the back, there's a kitchen. Here's like a place, which is it's a dining room. And many of our works, from this piece, for example, but also the piece, the Autocrat, is inspired by the Shakers, which is a kind of religious group from the 18th century from America. And they were, well, to make it short, they were very much interested in manufacturing of products. So that was their thing. And they said manufacturing of products, and to reach a kind of perfection, is a way to worship God. So they really try to make as beautiful and as good furniture with the least use of material and the best technology. And they made many inventions. So they invented, for example, the washing machine and the circular saw. They were the first people that started to to how to say to work to improve the seeds for agriculture. So before the farmers, they made the seeds themselves. They were bad seeds, but they start to make them perfect. You know, like a little bit like genetical manipulation. So they were very interesting group of people. But this has, of course, this has a lot to do with the founding of an ideal community, like the Bourneville, the Shakers, AVL. And well, this is except that we do art and architecture and design. We also make a lot of machines, machines to produce goods. So this, for example, is a machine to cut wood. So you put a tree trunk, and with this converted motorcycle engine, you cut lumber from the trees. And same thing is this is the generator to produce electricity. It produces about 80 kilowatts of energy, which is quite a lot. And so it's made out of the engine of my old car, actually, very fast Italian Alfa Romeo, and a very typically Dutch generator. And what I like about the Italian thing is that it's like Italian. It's very nice designed. It has something, how to say, Italian, masculine. And then, well, the clumsy stuff in the middle, that's what we made. And this is the generator, and that's a typical Dutch product. So very often, like when people need to make a generator, they make a model and they cast it in iron, and then they fabricate it, and then you have a generator. But the typical Dutch way would be to take a tube, to cut the tube, to weld some plates in it, here and there, and then have this thing functioning as well. So it's not like shaping and casting, but more like constructing things. I think that was a very nice, to me it was a very nice combination of these two different worlds. Here is an improved still, which is very high-tech and completely computerized. So it means that in the morning you fill it with a homemade beer or wine, whatever. And at night there are a lot of temperature control and switches and valves that separate the good with the bad alcohol. So at night you come and you have 2 barrels of alcohol, one with alcohol for cleaning or burning and one barrel of alcohol for drinking. And as I told you, I have this really obsession with food. And so last year we built the Pioneer set, which is a farm, a prefabricated farm. And the idea is that you have, all the structures and materials that you need to operate a farm. You make them, and you make them in such a way that you can take them apart and transport it in a shipping container as well. So this is the chicken coop, which is as well, so we did a lot of research on chicken and animals to find the ideal house or the ideal living situation for chicken. So a place where they feel fine, where they can take care of their children and women and their surrounding, they have food and doesn't stink, etc. So the ideal chicken house. The rabbits have bad luck, I think. If I had to make it again, I would change it. Anyway, this is the container in which you can move and store all the materials of all the structures that you can take apart. That's the stable, that's the house, and this is the pig shacks. The stable. The storage for the tools and the hay for the pigs. And the house. And actually the house has exactly the same layout as the stable and the same size. So it's like, in a way you could say, it's like you say, well, I am the same as the animals that I raise and kill. And this is like a small unit for hermits, you say. And maybe it's very interesting as well for the people who attended the workshop today, because this is like a traditional layout of a house, but it's scaled down, so it's very small. In the middle, it's just big enough to stand. In the back there is a bed, and there is some storage. And here there is a place that could function as a living room. And although it's very small and traditional and very straightforward, it's a very agreeable space to stay. And this is the official foundation of AVL-Ville last summer in Hanover, where we were invited to do a project. So we built this, we converted this shipping container. We made a bar inside, a backstage and a stage, and some like camouflage stuff. And then on this Hanover, like the World Exhibition, we behaved very bad actually, by not accepting any rules, because there were a lot of rules there. You're not allowed to do this, not allowed to do that, no fire, no junk, no sleeping. And actually we did everything, and we got away with it. And so there was the official start. This is our flag. And let me see. Okay, so from this summer onwards, we said, okay, this is the official foundation of AVL-Ville, and now we have to do it. We have to realize our plans. So we made the flag, we made money, and printed money. It was an exhibition here in the Victorian Albert Museum. We made a constitution with the most, we were collaborating with the most famous criminal and bad lawyer from the Netherlands. And he's a kind of a very strange, how to say, strange. He's like a freedom fighter. He's black, he's gay, and he thinks that criminals have a lot of individual freedom. And he's very famous, very expensive, and very funny. So he's helping us with the constitution, which will be a very simple constitution actually. And we asked the city of Rotterdam for a piece of land. And we said, of course, well, we have all these beautiful plants, but we need the land. And you, city of Rotterdam, you have the land, so why don't you give it to us? And he said, yes, that's a very good idea. And so they said, we have this a very large piece of land on the outskirts of Rotterdam, next to the airport, and this is like a storage of polluted soil. And which will be, how you call it, sanitized, or whatever you call it. They put a layer of asphalt around over it and plastic, and then they put another layer of soil, which is healthy soil. But the only thing is that you're not allowed to build on top of this land, at least not in the traditional way, because then you have to drive piles through this protective layer, and then the poison comes up. And but we always build very lightweight or mobile structures, so we don't need piles, we don't need foundations. And so it would be good, but this piece of land takes another couple of years to be ready for us. So we went back to the city, said, come on, give us something else. And they said, yeah, we have 2 pieces of land. And one is next to our studio, which you will see in a while. And the other one is around the corner of our studio. I'll tell more about it later. This is the studio itself. So this is the workshop. So here's one of those houses we produce in series. This is like well, some kind of a fence for a school in Munich. And well, there's some stuff there. That's our office that we also built ourselves on top of a set of containers. And this is our property here and here. And so at the moment we are still working on like the infrastructure, so we need like sewerage and electricity and water in the land, so we're making that. And then in, well, 2 months' time we are going to put everything on its place, and it will be finished then on the 28th of April, because that's the official opening of AVL-Ville. So this area, which is around the studio, will be dedicated to production and living. So this part will be like, well, the little village, you could say. This here is our power plant. So inside the shipping container is will be the generator and the incinerator. So in the port of Rotterdam you have a lot of wood that you can get for free, or they even pay you when you take it away. This wood can be burned in this super high efficient heater, boiler. And inside the second container is the first of these buffer tanks, and there will be more buffer tanks later. Then on top of the roof there is, we are building I don't know the English word, a halophyte filter. It's like a reed filter. It's like a way how you can filter grey water with the use of plants. And later on we will add solar power and things like that. Oh, no, here it is. So this is the heating system. And on the right-hand side, it's not finished, as you can see. It's the space underneath the office, which will function as a restaurant, a communal kitchen, and cook club. And so the good thing about our land is that we refuse to not refuse. We just said we're not going to ask for building permits or comply with zoning laws. And well, the first instance they said, okay, it's fine. And then they start to worry a bit. And now we are negotiating with those people, and probably we will end up that we don't need any building permits, which I think is very essential for AVL-Ville, since it's a kind of a free state. And then I think we should not be hindered by these stupid laws. So when this place will be finished, it will be a very good place where you can have, or you can cook yourself, or you can have very good and cheap food. Another thing which is very important for the free state is the infrastructure and all the things you need to have a village running. It's like energy, heat, electricity, water, and sewerage. So here, it's also not finished, is the compost toilet that we devised. So here on top there's a very nice unit of fiberglass, very slick, very shiny, very, well, it's designed, it looks like a part of a nice ship. And underneath there is a tank that is used for the composting of the human waste. And this is like containers for garbage and straw. And another thing we are building at the moment, we are designing at the moment, is the biogas digester, which means that all the compost storage is very usable for remote areas, within areas, civilized areas, like for example in the village or in a restaurant, it's better to use a biodigester, since you can use the shit to generate gas, propane, a kind of propane, which can be used to heat and to cook. And also, like all the, you also, sorry. We also have the farm and all the, like, I call that surplus manure will come to this place and will be composted. And then, well, the end product of this process is gas and manure. Like, you know, yeah, manure, you could say. This is our tractor that's will be used for the farm, which is on AVL-Ville 2, and it's the other piece of land around the corner. So we're also going to use this tractor to offer public transport in the city of Rotterdam, and it means that there will be a large trailer behind the tractor, and you drive around in the city, you know, central station, some museums, some tourist areas, some nice places, and then people, they can ride with us for free as long as they drink. And of course, we show a couple of times a day, we drive to AVL-Ville to show them our stuff. So to show them and to offer them and to inspire them. So, well, at the moment we are very, very busy with this AVL-Ville plan, which I think is very interesting because it becomes very vague. Everything is where it's about, so you don't know if it's real or it's not real, if it's funny or very sad, if it's nice or not. And a lot of people, especially lately, it's very fashionable to talk about utopia. A lot of art exhibitions are about utopia. And of course they think we are utopia, but we are not utopia. Because utopia is something you cannot realize. It's in the dictionary, that utopia is something you cannot realize. And I'm not interested in things that you can't realize. I'm interested in things you can realize. So for us, it's better to change this word utopia into heterotopia. And heterotopia means that you can, you do it in a different way. In a different way, I think, according to me, if we do it a different way, we can find or create more possibilities to shape the world around us. So we do, and we try to do it as fast as possible. So if I call city employees, people who are with the rules, are too slow. So before they realize, it's finished, and then it's very difficult to turn it back. Well, one of the reasons I am here today is actually to help with the workshop of Group 4, I think, that are designing at the moment a capsule hotel. And this capsule hotel should offer place to, well, I don't know, 5, 6 or 8 people. And it will be, well, they are designing it now. In March it will be produced in Rotterdam within 1 month time, and then it will find a place on the premises of AVL-Ville. And then it can be used by AA students that come to visit the Netherlands or Rotterdam, or well, or other guests. So I think it's a very interesting project, and I'm very curious how it will work out. So, the last news is that we found a farmer for the farm. And he's a son of a farmer, but he also studied organic agriculture. So he's like someone with a lot of knowledge. So he's going to set up the farm in such a way that it functions as a real farm, with real animals and real production of organic food. But the soil we have in Rotterdam, it's not particularly good. So the whole system is built on mobile gardens, mobile trees, and greenhouses. So in such a way, you can even, not only with the architecture, which is mobile, but you also can make the nature, you can make mobile. And to operate and to exploit the farm in a way that normally would not be possible. That was the latest news, and well, if you have questions, I will ask them. Alex.
Tis on? Joep, I wondered, on what basis will people live at AVL-Ville?
AVL-Ville is actually built for people who work or have been working or have made a significant contribution to AVL. So it means it's not for anyone who wants to come, but it should be people who are related or with AVL. So, and the rule we have, so the people who work in the studio, they can build their own house on the land. And of course there will not be any building regulations, or just like a few maybe. And the people, they get the material for free, but they have to invest the labor themselves. So they can take whatever they want, and then at night they build their house. And which after 5 years will be their property, and then they can take it away or whatever, burn it down.
Any other questions?
How much are the containers, and where do you get them from?
How much they are?
Yeah.
The price of a container, like a new container, is about, let me see, if you are lucky, £2,500, and second hand, the cheapest I saw was about £100. But normally the ones we use them, or they are new, or they are second hand, and second hand they are about £1,000, or even sometimes less even. So it's very cheap. It's a very cheap unit to start building from.
And also, how big is, how much sort of land does AVL-Ville take up at the moment?
Can you repeat?
How big is AVL-Ville?
Oh, it's about now it's about 15,000 square meters. But in the future it will be more like 100,000 or maybe more square meters. I don't know. I think what is very important when you want to live in a place where you can make your own rules, you should keep it small. If you start making it very big, you get the same kind of things that are here in our society. You start making more rules because it becomes more difficult. So I think it should be small, with very few rules, and then everything, if there are problems, they should be solved. So you talk to them and say, like, oh, I don't like what you're doing, and you talk and you solve it. Small community, I don't know, 100 or so. No, no, they actually preferably not. So no, they should. I think the best is that they design something that, which they like, and not something that I like or other people from the studio like.
Excuse me. If someone commits a murder in your town, do you punish them or does the Dutch punish?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
If someone commits a murder in your town, do you punish them or does the Dutch government?
Well, it depends. But probably if nobody else knows it, like then I will punish them. But if the Dutch police knows about it, then they will come and they take him. Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good question. Well, there is in Denmark, in Copenhagen, you have a place which is called Christiania, and it's a kind of a hippie colony, which was squatted 30 years ago, and started as a completely as a free state as well. And in Christiania, there are no rules at all, so you could do whatever you want, but there are some rules. You have to pay a kind of rent or like a kind of contribution to the community, and in which but there are no building regulations. There is no organization. And I spoke to some people there, some of the founders, and I asked them, tell me things, and they said, well, the good thing about it is it's complete anarchy. There are no rules at all, which feels very nice. And the bad thing is that there are no rules. Because in that sense, it's very difficult to start new things. So when there are meetings, there are a lot of people coming, and the only thing they do is to complain and fight about the past instead of being constructive about the future. So I think, in my opinion, there should be very few rules, rules that are very open for interpretation, and some kind of a logical problem-solving hierarchy. Like, someone who's very wise, who can decide, what's the solution for this problem. So that's why I decided to have a constitution. And it sounds nice to have a constitution, it's fine.
If there are no more questions, I think I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Joep Van Lieshout, not just for tonight's incredibly enjoyable lecture, but for the day's workshop, and in anticipation of a good collaboration between the school and AVL. Joep Van Lieshout, thank you very much.